All right, welcome to a YouTube video that's not going to be longer than it has to be. Today I'm going to share with you 10 tips about the Ableton Push 2 that will make you a more proficient user of the Ableton Push 2. Already taking too long here. So tip number one is to take all of the audio effects that you use all the time, and we're going to put them all together in a group, and we're going to assign the parameters to what are called macros. And it's going to be super easy to use on the push, as you'll see. Let's just get right into it. All right, so you can see I've created a MIDI track here. I'm using Silent. It's a synth that sounds like this. Cool. So the first audio effect that I'm going to grab is the auto filter, and I'm going to change it to the high pass filter. Select it, and I'm going to do Command G to put it in a group, even though it's by itself. And right here, I'm going to click this circular button, and that's going to display all of my macros. So these are all knobs that are not assigned to anything right now, but I'm going to assign parameters of my choice to those macros. So the first one for this auto filter is going to be frequency. So I'll right click on that, and I'll do map to macro 1. So now, as you change this macro, that's affecting this. That's what that little green dot signifies. This is what the macro that we just made sounds like. Very good for transitions. It's really thinning out the sound, removing all of the lows from it. So I'm going to now grab another auto filter. I'm going to put that after it, and I'm going to assign the frequency to macro 2. So now it's going to do the exact opposite of that when I turn macro 2. It's removing all of the highs from that sound. All right, so I'm just going to name this group real fast, and we can move on. Once we make this once, you can save it and then just put it on all of your tracks. You don't have to make this ever again. Cool, so we now have two auto filters, one doing the high pass, one doing the low pass. The next effect I'm gonna grab is actually chorus, which I've been using a lot lately. And I'm just gonna do the dry wet to macro 3. Every time I put a new effect in the group, it just selects that effect. So I just have to click on the group again, and now I have this dry wet right here. All right, so I'm just gonna rename these real fast so that we stay organized. So this first one I will click on and do Command R for rename, or Control R if you're on a PC. I will call this one high pass. This next one is the low pass. Then this is chorus amount. So the next effect that I'm gonna grab is a delay. So just the standard delay. So I'm gonna grab two parameters from this to assign to macros. The first one's gonna be feedback, and the next one is gonna be the dry wet, or the amount. Little tip here, if you hold shift and then scroll up and down, you can scroll sideways here. This one's called feedback already, but I'm gonna just call it, to stay organized, delay feedback. The word feedback won't fit, so I'm just gonna do like that. And then this one I'm gonna call delay amount. Okay, so now that we have the delay here, we can listen to it. That's what it sounds like straight out the box. And generally I like my delays around, I don't know, like 20 or 30%, maybe even less. Feedback less too. I think it sounds pretty good. And the last effect that I'm gonna grab is just standard reverb. And I'm gonna first assign the size to 6, decay time to 7, and the dry wet to 8. I like to enable the low cut, and then I will turn the quality to high. I'm just gonna turn off this diffusion network stuff. So I'm holding shift and scrolling here, and I'm gonna change room size to just reverb size. The next one, I just hit tab and it went to the next one, is going to be reverb decay. Then the last one is reverb amount. All right, so the group is selected and it shows all of the different devices that are in the group, but if you just press the group, and so now we just see the group, it's nice and organized, and I have all these parameters that I can use. You can now save this group by clicking on this little disc, then you can save it to whatever you want. I use a group like this all the time, to the point where I would almost save it as your default MIDI or audio track, so that every time you start a new track, this will be already on it, so you can go right into messing with the sounds as opposed to like building all these effects every time, and you can start being creative really fast, and it's tip number one. All right, so tip number 2 is super useful for anyone who does live looping with the Push 2, or anyone who just uses the Push 2 live in general. And essentially what we're doing is creating empty cells to record into in the future, but they're going to be of different lengths. So you can make one of 1 bar and then one of 2 bars or one of 4, however many bars you want. But in creating them ahead of time, you don't have to worry about like going to fixed length and then trying to make them on the fly and also get back in time to go record. If you just make empty cells ahead of time, then you can just play right into them later. And you can only really see this tip or use this tip inside of session view here, as opposed to arrangement view over here. If you hit tab, you switch between these 2 modes. And this is session view where we record individual cells. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna double click on an empty cell here, and it's gonna create a clip there. And what you can do is you can see that this is a 1 bar clip. It says length 1. All right, so as you can see, I loaded up a second synth here, and what I'm gonna do is double click on this cell, and I'm gonna create a clip here that's also 1 bar, but I'm gonna change it to 2 bars with length over here. As you can see, as I hit enter here, it doubled in length. We have one 1 bar clip here, and we have a 2 bar clip here. So I've loaded up this drum loop here to play along with, and it sounds like this. Cool, so I'm gonna record enable the first track. The easiest way to just record enable a track is to just quickly hold it down. For the longest time, I was holding the record enable button and then clicking on the track, which also does the same thing, but you can just hold it down for like literally 1.5 seconds and it will record enable the track. So, boom. Okay, so what you need to know is that you can record into this clip, even if you're in notes mode. If I hit record, then it starts that clip and starts recording into it. All right, so I'm gonna play this drum loop. I'm gonna go to the synth. Now it's record enabled, and I am going to record a little part here. All right, so I'm sitting here editing this video now, and there's something that I should have explained, which is why, if you look back, it took an extra bar before the loop that the chord that I just recorded started playing. And the reason is because I let go of the notes on the push like a millisecond after the bar had recorded. So then it started recording into the next bar. But had I just let go before the bar ended, it would have started playing right away. But that's why. All right, so if I hit quantize, I know people are super against quantizing, but with live looping, it is so helpful, especially when you're recording MIDI, just because MIDI is a freaking mess. All right, so anyway. So we have this 1 bar chord here. So now we're gonna record into the 2 bar loop that we made in this second synth here. So I'm gonna record enable it. Everything is playing. Go into notes mode. Cool, so I can go back into the devices here and start messing with those parameters that we made earlier. If I make the reverb crazy high. All right, so that was 2 different tips right there that I was planning on sharing. The first one being to make the cells ahead of time and make them the proper length for what you already plan on recording into them. And then the other tip was to that you can just hold right here and it will record enable the tracks for you. Okay, so the way that I set up the push 2 to play as an instrument, you go to scale. So I switch to chromatic and then I make sure that it's in fourths. This is actually laid out pretty similar to how a guitar is laid out, but I'm just gonna show you in chromatic in fourths how I would play some of these chords, and these are basically just bar chords on the guitar. So if you play the root with your thumb and then the 5th with your pinky, and then you're gonna play the next root up, the octave, with your middle finger. And that right there is a power chord on guitar. But if I'm gonna add one more note, which is gonna be the next 3rd up, and I'm gonna do that with my middle finger, so it's cool. So that's a major chord, and then so in this key, which is C major, that's a C major. Then the next chord up, I'll just do the 2 chord as well, which is a D minor, which is going to be the same thing, except for rather than that major 3rd, which is this, it's gonna be the minor 3rd, which is gonna be this. But instead of being on the 1 chord, it's on the 2 chord. So here's 1, here's 2. So in this chord, it's the root, the 5th, the root, and then the minor 3rd. So you have 1, 2, 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, 7 diminished. So the next one is to make good drum racks, and I don't mean necessarily the samples that you choose, but more how you lay it out to play them, and I will go ahead and show you that right now. So I'm going to create a new MIDI track to show you this drum rack layout that I use, and I'm going to do Command-Shift-T, Control-Shift-T if you're on a PC. And as you can see, I have one of these mix racks that just shows up on any MIDI track or audio track that I make. The one that I showed you how to make is actually better than the one that I have that opens by default. So I'll probably just change that later. But anyway, I'll delete that. And I'm going to go to Instruments. I'm just going to throw a drum rack onto this empty MIDI track. All right, so I'm going to grab some drum samples and put them into this drum rack in the layout that I prefer. And you can see how I do it. And maybe you like it, maybe you don't. Kicks. Cool. So I like my main kick to be here, and then I'm gonna grab, there we go. All right, so I have these 2 kicks here. I'm gonna grab some hi-hats. I'll put that here. Cool, so this kind of might look weird that I have hi-hat, kick, kick, hi-hat. I'll grab that one, it's in the right key. Sure. Cool, so the way I like to play these, so I hit this first kick with my middle finger, and I have this hi-hat with my ring finger. And then I have the snare here with my pointer finger. And I have this other hi-hat and kick with hi-hat with my middle finger and kick with my pointer finger. And then I can also just grab that crash with my middle finger and just switch between having pointer finger on the snare and then put it just on the kick for 1 second. So it's like super intuitive, at least for the way I play. Okay, so the next tip is to allow Ableton and the Push-To to suggest parameters for you. For instance, if you grab any audio effect and throw it on a track, we will say delay for this example, even though we already put one in our group. If you look at the Push-To, it suggests a bunch of parameters here that you can mess with. If I just look at what the push is already suggesting, you might come up with cool ideas that you don't use very often. For instance, filtering the delay inside of the delay. I don't do that very often. So that's the next tip, is to just allow the Push-To to suggest parameters for you to mess with when you load up an audio effect or anything. A bunch of synths actually show up with parameters to mess with as well. So this tip is basically that no matter how many clips or cells you fill up here, I always suggest leaving this bottom row empty. If you have a clip that's playing and you hit an empty cell below it in that same row on that same track, it will stop the one above from playing. And that's a really convenient way to stop clips from playing. Rather than having to go hit stop clip and having to time stuff out, you can basically, all right. So imagine all of these clips were filled right here. And these were all different synth parts here. And I'm going through different ones here, and imagine it was a different chord there. So if these were all filled and I wanted to remove that one part, all I would have to do is hit right here. So that's a super easy way to stop clips from playing, is to just leave an empty cell at the bottom and just hit that one to stop the clip that's above it from playing. All right, so this next tip is kind of hard to explain, but what it is I'm going to use the swing parameter, which is this second from the top left knob, And I'm gonna use that parameter to help me find out what kind of swing is going on in the loops that I like, that I wanna replicate. For instance, if I take this loop here, and I'm gonna put it back into the arrangement view, and I'm gonna hit this orange button to stop them all from being triggered on the session view, or as I call clip view, and I didn't mean to do that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag this drum audio track to the top, and I'm gonna put my drum rack right below it just to keep it organized. I'll close this. And so just real fast, I'm gonna create a MIDI clip here, Command Shift M, and I'm gonna put a kick here. And I like to just start with mine all at 16th notes. And I'm just gonna do this with the kick, but you can do this with all of the different drum parts. I'm going to listen to the loop. I'm gonna hold Alt and I'm gonna drag these kicks to wherever I hear a kick inside of the drum loop. Okay, so already, another one, boom. So you got a double one there. And this one you can tell has a swing on it, but just by looking at it, you can't tell exactly how much it is swung, but I will show you how to do that. So I'm gonna put one there. So basically, I'm just gonna do this with the first bar and just keep it simple because, like I said, I'm not trying to make this the longest video because there are so many YouTube videos that could be 30 seconds, but they make it an 11-minute video, and it is the most frustrating thing ever. So I'm gonna loop that, and what you got going on here is we wanna find out how swung is this kick right here. I am going to open this up here just to show you. Basically, we're gonna keep adding swing to it until this lines up with this. Right now it's at 0 amount swing. And so I'm gonna make sure it's quantized by 16th notes, which it is. And I'm just gonna keep adding swing to it. 11%, 14, blah, blah, blah. Keep going up. Whatever you want, you just line it up with that kick right there, and that is right there. That was about 70% swing. All right, and this last tip is super awesome, and it is to combine your pitch bend from your actual good keyboard with the push 2, because this pitch bend, while it looks cool, it sucks. All right, so I'm gonna grab this keyboard right here, and I'm just using this keyboard right now for this right here, this pitch bend right here. If I want to pitch bend with the push 2, this is my least favorite pitch bend that I've ever used. So I'm gonna use this one, and you can get super creative with it and super minimal. And just for instance, if you were to play this note, you could bend into it and try, and it will sound way more human. All right, so those are my 10 tips to become more proficient with the Ableton Push 2. I do have one bonus suggestion, which is to put the Push 2 and all of your gear for that matter, where you're gonna actually use it. Like, put it in front of you if you wanna use it all the time. I see so many people who put their gear and their Push 2 like on another shelf away from their desk, and I never see them actually even use it in any videos or anything. And basically, I'm really big on just having things where it's super accessible and you don't have to think too much to start using it. Oh my fuck.